All right, click the links. Join channel here over at subscribe. Sorry, I got a mailbox. You want to mail me some comics or whatnot. So Baldur's Gate, the based mod, fixes the game's diversity problem. The Mary Sue actually frames this wrongly. They say it's as a mod fixes the game's inclusivity problem while shutting down an istophobic mob. That is when you have God, that should be a war crime. That's when you have it backwards because diversity is stupid. Nobody wants it but filthy vermin communists. Which, half the time they're not playing the game anyway. Or, you go, oh, hey, you want to play the game? You want to mod it to the way you want it? Great. Now that applies to everyone else gets to mod it to the way they want. So what happened is the game has a Mary Sue purse puppy character, which is one thing, but people should have the right to swap the black for white or vice versa so they feel more comfortable in a safe space of their own people. And they don't have to be traumatized by these woke cancer characters. And the reverse is also true. If you want it to be all black, white, brown, fine, whatever. Everyone should have the right to be free of diversity, or if you want it to have it in there, that's fine. I mean, most people think diversity is cancer, but you should be able to mod the game any way you want, and I don't see why anyone would have a problem with it. But these effing idiots, the Mary Sue, seem to get their noses in everybody's business. So this dude mods out the black character, and a bunch of soy people pretend to be outraged on Twitter. Why? If people hate diversity so much, you must respect their choices. Eric Hartman, it's my lifestyle choice. No, you're just not a tubby. And it's a video game. Why do these people care if they remove the black characters? So another mod goes in there and swaps the white out for black, and that is stunning and brave for some reason. They turned everyone black, but when one character was turned white, that was highly problematic. It's like, what's the difference? Yikes, my guy. And then they insert some, Saul Alinsky Frankfurt School type of nonsense. Whenever they make an argument, like they get to the conclusion, you just look at me like, your argument does not logically support your conclusion. That's why the left wing can't meme, because they're midwits. They're like Dunning-Kruger midwits, and they think they're Nietzsche or something. Anyway, so which is funny because like a lot of their old philosophers, if you read everything they wrote, like a lot of the stuff that, what else did Marx write about other groups of people, or what did Che Guevara say about these other groups of people? How did he refer to those other groups of people again? Oh well, that doesn't matter. It's like, kind of does, because you're basing your whole left wing globalist stuff on Marx and Engels and Guevara and all the writings of all these people. It's like, let's look at everything they wrote. I'm trying to delicately say they wrote things that would not be politically correct today. Yeah, what did the communists have to say about BLT type of relationships? Yeah. Anyway, so the thing is, we support both mods by all means. Mod the game so you can get the version you want. What the people are telling you is they want the games to look like them, but what the Mary Sue types are saying is no. The games have to be mixed. What is it, chick? Jennifer Blair, fucking useful idiot, says no. It's fabulous that everyone's black now. Okay, great. Hey, play the game you want. But for everyone else who wants the game to be all white, it's like that should be the game they want to play, or all Asian, or all Latin, whatever. People should be able to play the games they want to get. What the Mary Soups are trying to say is no. Games have to be mixed. Why? People hate all that mixing type of stuff. That doesn't have verisimilitude. It doesn't have the willing suspension of disbelief. It doesn't have the appearance of truth. And ultimately, it's like people's own choice. If they don't want it there, why are you trying to force them to have this forced diversity? So the left looks at it as a diversity problem to be solved. That means they have to force their worldview on people. We look at it differently. People should be free to mod the game so they feel comfortable, free of all this silly diversity, and it really, really is. And when you think about it, it makes more sense with European characters anyway, and not African ones, because these types of fantasy stories are based on European mythology, not African mythology. So when you include non-Euro characters, you're actually erasing and culturally appropriating the European mythology and the European stories. And you kind of explain that to them, and they look at you like, "I can't believe you just said that. The truth? You can't believe I just said the truth?" Well, if more people started telling the truth, like this stuff just never would have taken foot. In the '90s, all this political correctness stuff started, and then people just laughed at it so hard, they lampooned it so hard, probably because of right wing talk radio. And then after 9/11, it all came back. It's like nobody has pushed back on it, mainly because people switched from radio to social media, and social media was so tightly controlled by like a half a dozen woke companies. But the thing is, why shouldn't people be able to tailor the games for their enjoyment? Diversity is not a problem to be fixed in that they want to force it where it doesn't belong. It's fixed when you remove the non-Euro characters and make the game feel more authentically European. You have blacks in a Euro myth-based story? That's the problem? Because they didn't work metal to make swords or armor or domesticate horses or even work leather more than making shields. They just didn't do a lot of this kind of stuff. It's just not in their timeline, and that's not a compliment or insult. And the left wing gets so triggered when you compare like objective factual things. And it's like you're triggered because you're placing values on things, and we're not triggered because we're just looking at the world the way it is. Everything the left does is so humiliating because they don't accept people as they are, because they secretly think the Euro history is better than the African. So they force the blacks into the Euro story structure instead of just setting the blacks into an African story structure and mythology, which would make sense. That's when stories have that willing suspension of disbelief. But they're terrified to do it because then they have to have the blacks fight blacks with spears and oxhide shield shaka of the Zulu style. And for some reason, that is highly problematic to the liberals. Like if you show somebody with, like a traditional African warfare uniform, which feathers and bones and an oxhide shield and a soggy spear and all this kind of stuff, they would just lose their mind. And you go like, why does that bother you? It's like that's an actual photo from 150 years ago. That's the war costume. Why does that trigger you so much? They don't really have a reason for it, but they just throw in a lot of Frankfurt School language. Why not just accept people as they are and accept that the history is different and work within the story structure? Because liberals look down on African mythology. They think the Euro is legitimately superior. Obviously, I'm super base, but I look at it and I just see it as different. It's just adapted to its environment. Study the history of Setiwayo and Panda and their conflicts and tell a story within that mythos instead of forcing blacks into the Euro ones, because it looks ridiculous when you see a black character dressed as a Euro elf. And even if some obese cat lady or soy boy was listening to this, they would get triggered by the words I was using, but they wouldn't address the argument. It's just the word. You refer to them as blacks. It's like what you're not at the peak of the argument. You're just sidestepping over on words. It's just the most, like talking to left wingers. It's got to be exhausting being a left winger where you're just being triggered by every little thing. Where they just have to. They just want to be white knights. Like this is just first world problems. You're looking at them like, you guys really have nothing better to do, don't you? Yikes, my guy. It's just fantasy representation matters. Fantasy. It's like, well, which one is it? Is it fantasy or is it representation matters? Because this is all Euro-based mythology. It doesn't make sense that you're erasing Euro characters. Oh, like one of the things that trigger them is they go, it's dehumanizing to say blacks instead of whites, where you say white people. So I just started to say, instead of saying white people, I just refer to them as whites now. Because you might as well try to upset as many people as possible. And the thing with representation is, when they're erasing these European characters, you can't represent them if they don't exist organically in the story. And these people don't organically exist in European mythology. It's ridiculous. And if it's just fantasy, then it should be fine if people mod it to create a safe space where they feel comfortable and not triggered by toxic woke cancer. The other thing is these cat ladies are throwing around that racism word way too casually, but it actually is working to our advantage because they finally watered down that word so much that people understand that it just means some fat low IQ whiner is having PMS and wants to virtue signal for some attention. The more people call something phobic, the greater the odds are that it's probably pretty cool. Because when you look at these obese soy boys and 200-pound cat ladies whining about istophobicism, you realize that they're incredibly lame people, and whatever they think is a problem is probably a lot of fun. Just look at it like, oh yeah, well you don't have to get involved in it, you don't have to play it, but we want to play it. And then you realize like they want to stop you from doing something that they don't have any involvement in, where it's this, they really have to control other people, and they get triggered when they're not allowed in spaces to act as a political commissar, which is why you have to gatekeep. And the thing is, this whole argument doesn't have to happen. Just let people mod the game the way they want. Problem solved. They want it black. I want it all blonde Swedish bikini team. So what's the problem? I hate diversity. The more people just start admitting it, the sooner we can move on to having, different things for different people. Inclusivity isn't a problem in the sense that they mean it is. We don't want inclusivity. The problem is when they force it, and someone isn't istophobic for turning a black character to a fair one. It's racist when you include a black character in European mythology. It's just not enough people are coming out and saying this. To be fair, someone in the Twitter comments did say that, but then it's like as soon as you say it on Twitter, they just block you because they want to stay in an echo chamber. This isn't black culture. This isn't sub-Saharan African culture. The swords and the armor and the shields and the metallurgy and the smelting and the mining and the oring. That's not what they did. That's all European culture, or at least Eurasian culture. They didn't do any of this stuff. This is all cultural Bolshevism. It's part of the humiliation ritual, but it's also this weird soft bigotry of lowered expectations. Like I'm talking about, Panda and Setiwayo and the story of the Zulus. It's like you can tell stories like that, but in the liberals' mind, they view it as less than because it's not as technologically advanced. But they place value on that, or they think other people place value on that. It's like, just accept the world the way it is, and you'd be a whole lot happier if you just accept things. It's like, why don't you just tell that story? Oh, because that would be problematic, and people would write articles about perpetuating harmful stereotypes. It's like, it's objectively true. Why don't you tell a story about something like that, some kind of tribal warfare? And then the other thing is, because the antagonist and protagonist would both be black, they both look the same, and liberals can't have that because they have to have the antagonist be blonde hair, blue eyed, evil people. Didn't they actually? I think they did that in Rings of Power, where they swapped out the orcs. I think they lightened their skin. They changed them from, they were kind of darker gray, and they kind of lightened them up to lighter gray, almost some hints of whiteness, but they made the eyes blue. I don't know if in the original they had blue eyes or not. They might have, because I think they're like corrupted elf. I'm not sure. But in the Rings of Power, it's like they focused on that more. They did a lot of weird things, and then you start looking at it, you're like, this is just like, Frankfurt School Propaganda 101. I mean, once you really look at this stuff, you really see it. And you see it everywhere, and it's not confirmation bias. You're seeing it everywhere because it is everywhere. I mean, for the love of God, that's ridiculous. That's, even me saying it's ridiculous triggers them. You go like, why are you so upset? This doesn't have any appearance of truth. This is like, you took a European mythology, and mostly a European character, elves and dwarves and orcs and hobbits and stuff like that, and you just made a black girl with the most European features you could find, and to make her look like an elf with at least somewhat mixed hair. Why are you doing this? Why don't you just have different things for different people? Because they're globalists, and it's I mean, you see it in every single movie that comes out lately. And in fact, they even did it in The Hobbit. My buddy told me not to watch The Hobbit, and foolish me, I went and watched it. And they did in The Hobbit, where they have the background village, and you look closely, and like, wait a minute, there's a chick who looks like this in the Hobbit movies. You're like, that's not what Peter Jackson wanted. They said they were gonna do with Lord of the Rings. The reason it was so powerful was it stayed as close to the books, and that was the first very heavy inclusion of the cultural mark, Bolshevism, was in that Hobbit, when they put a black girl in the character of this little village. Like, that's not how villages work. That's not how the story works. None of that makes sense. It was kind of shocking when it happened. That was like over 10 years ago. I think about it now. I think, yeah, it was probably, that's on the timeline of like when they first started making things obvious. And now you have Rings of Power. Like, Rings of Power is all this kind of stuff. Like, this is just patently absurd, but they're hoping it catches on with kids. Maybe it will. I mean, you can brainwash. You think of like when we were kids, the stupid stuff that we were brainwashed into believing. But the difference now is social media, like, channels like this get on there and talk about how absolutely this is all just cultural Marxism, trying to brainwash the kids. Anyway, that's a lot of hot words for YouTube. How many times did I say black? Probably too often. I'm going to have to use the euphemisms. I probably should have used more euphemisms. Anyway, like, comment, subscribe. I'll see you guys on the next episode.